On Good Friday, April 22nd, 1519, Spanish explorer Hernán Cortes arrived from Cuba and planted a cross and the red and gold banner of Spain in the Mexican sand, creating a town he called Villa de Veracruz, the city of the True Cross. In doing so, the stage was set for a clash of civilizations. Hernán Cortes was one of many poor young Spaniards who had come to the New World in search of both glory and gold.
These folks were merchants, maritime people, explorers, outcasts, those kind of folks that you don't necessarily like to associate with in polite company. These people are men of arms because in the 16th century, Europe is a very dangerous place, and everybody who was anybody walked around armed if you could use the weapon, and if you didn't or couldn't use a weapon, then you cowered an awful lot. It was not a nice place. People coming from not a nice place tend to be not nice.
Cortes had arrived in the Western Hemisphere at the dawn of an age of great discovery. The Pope had split the New World between the Spanish and Portuguese to spread Western civilization and the Christian gospel to the Americas. In Cuba, Cortes acquired great wealth using his guile to become protege and secretary to the Cuban governor, Diego Velázquez, delegate of the King of Spain. The governor named Cortes to command an exploration of the mysterious land to the west, Mexico. Cortes bought a small fleet and raised a 500-man mercenary army. There would be no pay, only the promise of gold, glory, and service to God.
Cortes was in many ways the quintessential Spanish conqueror. He was very smart, but not pensive or intellectual. He was much more a man of action. He had a large ego. He was fearless. He was a person who commanded respect and demanded respect. He was very much a man of his age, and he was the perfect conqueror, the man who was determined to accomplish what he set out to do.
But Cortes almost lost his mission before he set sail. Governor Velázquez grew suspicious of Cortes' loyalty. His suspicions were well-founded, but the messenger he sent to order a stop to the mission got to Cuba too late. Cortes and his men had already set sail. Cortes sailed along the Yucatan to the region of Tabasco, occasionally going ashore to battle the natives. After several unsuccessful skirmishes, local Indian tribes finally sought to appease Cortes, bringing gifts of fruit, maize, cloaks, and young women. One was named Marina by the Spaniards. She spoke both Mayan and Nahuatl, the language of the Aztecs. Marina would serve as an invaluable interpreter, as well as Cortes' mistress, becoming one of the most controversial figures in Mexican history. A traitor to some, hero to others.
What she is a very intelligent, very wily person. And just think of what she was able to do. She was able to translate between the Indian dialects and Spanish. She was able to negotiate two cultures. She was able to handle all that. So she must have been very talented. And let's not make her the villain because she was used by this imperial power. Let's appreciate her for what she actually did, which was quite a lot, and not blame her for the conquest.
On the Gulf Coast, directly opposite Tenochtitlan, where Cortes created Veracruz, there was no town, only empty beach. But for the clever Spaniard, it was a way to assume control of his own destiny and expand his mission as Captain General of a town that did not even exist.
Cortes knew that once he was on the high seas, he was outside of the law. So when he created the royal city of Veracruz on Good Friday, and thus the name, the Via of the True Cross, he was stepping back inside of the law. And then creating the town council of Veracruz, there was nothing there except the beach, but he, on paper, had created an entity. And it was that entity, the Ayuntamiento of Veracruz, that authorized him to lead them into the interior.
Meanwhile, back in Tenochtitlan, Moctezuma remained unsure whether the light-skinned visitors to the coast were gods. He sent emissaries bearing gifts to greet them.
Go now without delay. Do your reverence to our Lord the God. Say to him, your deputy Moctezuma has sent us to you. Here are the presents with which he welcomes you home to Mexico. Moctezuma.
But Moctezuma's plan backfired. His gifts of gold only whetted the Spaniards' appetite. Cortes made a public display of his military power to Moctezuma's emissaries, confirming their fear that the Spaniards were sent by the gods. The Aztecs had never seen horses and thought steed and rider were one creature. And they saw for the first time the flash of steel swords and fell to the ground at the thundering sound of cannon.
How the cannon roared! A thing like a ball of stone comes out of its entrails, shooting sparks and raining fire. They dress in iron and wear iron cases on their heads. Their deer carry them on their backs, as tall as the roof of a house. Aztec warrior.
When word reached Tenochtitlan, the Emperor Moctezuma was terrified. The all-powerful king moaned and wept. Intrigued by the gifts of gold and the stories of an incredible city far from the coast, Cortes decided to march inland to meet Moctezuma at the Aztec capital. A decision he knew would be unpopular among some of his men.
When Cortes was about to embark upon his march inland from Veracruz, he mustered all of his troops on the beach and asked them, he told them that it was going to be very difficult, that some would lose their lives, some would reap great rewards, but any of them who had doubts should step forward and they could return to Cuba. Some did step forward, and he said, no, you can't return to Cuba. But he knew who his enemies were. He had found a way to draw his enemies out into the open.
Cortes dealt with the rebels quickly, hanging 2 of the ringleaders and sinking his own ships so there would be no further thought of turning back. The route to the Aztec capital took the Spaniards through the lands of another civilization, the 150,000-member Tlaxcala tribe, who sent thousands of warriors against Cortes day after day. For 2 weeks, they staged a furious battle, leaving the Spanish weary with killing. Finally, the Tlaxcalans gave up and made peace. They agreed to join Cortes in his march on Tenochtitlan. The Tlaxcalans hated the brutal Aztecs who had used Tlaxcalan captives as sacrificial gifts to the gods. Cortes, along with 5,000 Tlaxcala warriors, marched on, smashing idols along the way and ordering a stop to human sacrifice as he preached to the native people. For the Spaniards, God as well as gold led to the path of glory.
It's easy to pass off the religiosity of the Spaniards and indicate that it was a kind of subterfuge or rationalization for what they did. I tend not to place much faith in that kind of interpretation. These were very religious people in spite of the lives that they took. They believed that they were serving their God, and if they had to commit atrocities in the name of religion, they were certainly prepared to do so.
On November 8, 1519, 8 months after departing Cuba, Cortes and his men crossed the mountains. They suddenly came upon an awesome vista, looking down into the sweeping valley at the incredible cities of the Aztec.
We were astounded. These great towns and temples and buildings rising from the water, all made of stone, seemed like an enchanted vision. Indeed, some of our soldiers asked whether it was not all a dream. Bernal Diaz.
Cortes marched into the island city of Tenochtitlan. Moctezuma came forward, carried on a litter covered with brilliant green feathers, jade and jewels. "Are you he?" Cortes asked when they came face to face. "I am he," the Lord of the Aztecs replied.
You know, there's a big bunch of people that are in this great entourage, and Moctezuma would justifiably be concerned. This is potentially a catastrophe.
Moctezuma II was faced with a real dilemma in 1519. Many religious leaders believed that this was Quetzalcoatl returning to Mexico as he had promised to do in the 10th century. Moctezuma himself did not know whether this was Quetzalcoatl or not, but because he didn't know, he was unwilling to take a chance of offending him, and therefore decided that he would allow the Spaniards to enter Tenochtitlan unopposed.
Soon, delicate civility would turn to brutal war.